What if building an e-commerce brand didn't mean chasing unicorn growth, but creating good income and real flexibility?
We started this business with 10K and we've scaled to 6 figures with one single product.
In this episode, you're going to hear how Andrew turned one product into a 6-figure e-commerce business, supporting his family and earning location independence along the way. This is a story about building a lifestyle business with e-commerce. Andrew, thanks so much for hopping on. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you sell?
I founded a company called Bevvo. So we sell portable blenders and a range of accessories to complement that. So the idea is basically how can we improve someone's smoothie solution, if you want to call it that, make it easier, quicker, and sort of provide them with this complete solution to making smoothies.
You've probably not been in the smoothie business all your life. What did you do before you started the business?
My background is in finance. So I did sort of a traditional schooling in the finance field. You know, I became an accountant, so a designated CPA in Montreal, Canada, or so Canadian CPA. We saw this product that we thought extremely interesting. It was, essentially it was a blender that didn't need to be plugged in. We thought it to be an interesting solution. Initially, it wasn't something that we were searching for. We basically, blended smoothies ourselves at home, and where we were working at the time was, let's say, a short walk from where we lived. So we basically, we would blend our smoothies at home in your traditional sort of plug-in blender. We'd split the smoothie between 2 cups, and we'd make our way, to different workplaces. I came across these cordless blenders, something that I hadn't really heard of before. Basically looked for suppliers of blender products to see if we could just get our hands on one, because all I really wanted was, one cordless blender for myself. When we came across a product that we really liked, we were like, hey, maybe, there's an actual market for this. At the time, one thing led to the next. We got in contact with a few suppliers, tested products, and with that first order, we saw that there was demand in the market for this type of product, something that was like unique, minimalist looking, a nice aesthetic, and so on. We launched, like I said, in 2019 with our Gen 1 version. We iterated on that and developed a Gen 2, and then earlier this year, we launched a Gen 3.
So Andrew, it's one thing to have an appreciation for the product, use the product, but the idea of validation, you mentioned setting up an initial order and selling them. How did you get your first sales to validate whether or not this was going to be a good business?
It was extremely new to myself and my wife as well. Like I said, we are finance people, always worked in a corporate setting. First thing we did was basically influencer marketing. The first influencer relationship we had was someone that had reached out to us. So essentially we just started a social media, an Instagram page. We took pictures ourselves, and one influencer, I forget how big like her follower count at the time, but let's say sub 100K. She reached out to us, thought the product was cool, and she's like, hey, I could definitely use this at the gym. Would you mind sending me one? And I'd love to post about it. So we sent her one. Good faith. This was the first time we were doing it, obviously. We sent her one. From there, I remember March 28th, 2019, we got our first sale. It was such a weird feeling, like getting the Shopify notification with the little and you're just like, whoa, we got a sale, sale 0001 or 10001. So from that, I think her just posting on her stories and genuinely liking the product, posting, we didn't pay her. We basically gave her the product and she liked it so much. She was posting, I would say for almost a week straight, she was posting shakes, recipes, different ideas to her audience. And, she wasn't a huge influencer, but I think she had a very loyal and engaged audience. So that helped. And from there, I think some of her followers were also influencers. So we got a lot of inbound DMs, direct messages from these other influencers. And so that was kind of the initial snowball where we were just basically sending product to influencers, and then they would post, and then maybe their followers would reach out to us. So we weren't doing so much outbound, primarily inbound, where we were fielding these messages from influencers. And like I said, at the time the product was unique in and of itself. Then we got into the world of paid ads, and then one thing led to the next.
What was the hardest part of getting this thing off the ground?
I think I always think of the saying, like, you don't know what you don't know. At the beginning, we just thought it would be as simple as creating this product and then, having a website, somehow people would find us, people would just buy it. And our initial strategy was to go the route of Amazon. So we originally wanted to just have a product, put it on Amazon, and then I guess, from what we knew at the time, is let Amazon's pool of buyers and their algorithm and the demand that existed already on that platform, to take us basically and propel sales from there. But before launching on Amazon, we did enough research. We weighed the options of having our own store first versus Amazon, and then just felt like we wanted to build up the brand a little bit more. The hardest part, and continues to be the hardest part today, is just generating traffic that can trust and convert on your product ultimately. Nowadays you can buy traffic, of course, through all the different social platforms, but building enough of a relationship, having a product that's good enough, gaining that trust of that consumer.
So looking back at your past success, what would you say your initial breakthrough was for the product?
Launching our second gen product. What we saw with the first gen was just this demand testing in the market. You basically sell the customer the product once. Maybe some customers are gifting, around the holiday season. When we launched that second version, and our initial momentum was focused on our existing Gen 1 customers, let's say through email, through retargeting ads from existing Gen 1 buyers, that was like the moment where we're like, okay, well, this base of people that are buying it again, clearly they like the product enough to buy it again. So, and at the beginning of this year when we launched Gen 3, same idea, where you have like these customers coming back and buying your product for potentially a third time. So
Andrew, you mentioned that you got your first paying customers through influencer marketing, it sounds like. What was your path to really scaling the business?
Paid ads, we just come back to paid ads, frankly, has always been the best lever, the best, most scalable, way that we've been able to generate revenue. So with influencers, a little bit more sporadic, even though you could have a better influencer program, like a steadier flow of influencer. We've rarely paid for influencer postings or collaborations, so it's always just been gifting. We've had like a 90% post rate, and when they do, you may have this kind of trickle effect of performance of sales, but nothing, unless you're really shipping influencer gifting, nothing so meaningful. But through Meta, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, that's where we've always found the most scale.
How long have you guys been in business?
6 years now.
How much did you make in your first year?
$300K.
How much did you make last year?
$50K. We were stocked out of inventory.
How much do you expect to make this year?
$150K.
So first year, $300K, just to make sure I understand this.
Yep.
And 2026, your expectation is about half that. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So talk me through that.
Like I mentioned, we've been in development of our Gen 3 product. So first year we had Gen 1. We scaled up with Gen 2 because of our development with Gen 3, where we switched suppliers. The previous supplier, so Gen 1 and Gen 2 supplier, no longer wanted to supply Gen 2 product to us. Understandably, they had kind of pitched this idea for a Gen 3 version of the product, but we found another supplier that we felt could just deliver a better quality product. So our projection for next year is $1 million just based on the production capacity. It's kind of been like an interesting journey where we've gone like up and down and built systems and broken systems. But that's kind of like the journey where we were selling more with Gen 2, getting into that $1 million range, of course, and then had to tear it all down in the past couple of years with no inventory, essentially.
Things are not always a straight line. They don't go straight up sometimes. Sometimes they waffle a bit. Talk to me about the struggle. What's been the hardest moment in the journey so far? When
we were basically stocked out and we didn't have a Gen 2 and our Gen 3 was still in development, those were the moments where you're like, man, is it just over, right? Like, was the opportunity that we had, is that now gone? But when the big players showed up, it felt like they're just going to take over the whole market. They have the distribution and so on. So I think those were the moments where like the kind of like your heart sinks and you're just like, damn, is the window closed? How do you compete on price? How do you compete on distribution? So you have to just be innovative. You have to just think of different ways of competing. You think about it, you're like, well, I guess they are continuing to validate the market. They are coming in and introducing, they're investing their dollars into developing this type of product as well in their collection. Clearly, there's an opportunity here that we're tapping into.
Andrew, you've been on a long journey. It started in 2019. We're at the end of 2025 at this point. How do you think you're different now compared to when you started this journey?
I think I have a much longer term view in our business than I did at the beginning. I mentioned we initially thought we'd be on Amazon, for example. When I think of my relationship with products I buy on Amazon, often I might not even remember the name. Now we view this as like, hey, we will be one of many brands that exist in the market. Customers will choose us over other brands for some reasons, and then they may choose other brands over us for other reasons. But our goal now is really just to deliver the best working, highest quality, best looking product on the market. And whichever customer ends up resonating with that is the customer that will sort of end up buying our product. So I think just having a longer term view in where we're going with the business, believing that it's just this journey that we're on.
So talking about life impact, what has this business made possible for you, your family so far?
Flexibility you get with owning your business, right? Like you're sort of a bit more, if you want to call it that, in control of your schedule. And it's hard to balance this kind of the work side versus the play side of your life. Having something that you're building for yourself. I have 2 daughters under the age of 4, so a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. They know the product by name, and we kind of tell them, hey, this is the product that we invented, we created. They use it. Hopefully one day, as they grow up, they will see that this product or this chance that we took on something became something, and we created this product in our thing. So I think that's kind of like that meaningfulness that we created, basically something from nothing.
Andrew, you are a veteran e-commerce store owner, 6-figure business. Not everybody can do that. What advice can you offer those that are in the thick of it, those that have just started their e-commerce store?
I would say to just keep going, because you never know what opportunities come about. Like when you just stay consistent with some of the stuff that you're doing, you don't know who's seeing your content, you don't know who's engaging or who can potentially buy the product. If I can recommend one book to anybody, it would be Dyson's Against the Odds. It's a book of how Dyson became Dyson, right, essentially. Tremendous sort of perseverance, resilience that you see in that book.
Andrew, this has been a valuable conversation. How can people connect with you?
The easiest way is probably through LinkedIn, Andrew Dulgar on LinkedIn. And then you can just check us out on mybevvo.com, so mybevvo.com, and through social at MyBevvo on Instagram.
What stood out to me in this conversation with Andrew is that not every e-commerce win looks like straight up hockey stick growth. Andrew built something tangible for a real world problem. Bevvo is a single product and employs a clear vision and is a business that supports Andrew's lifestyle instead of consuming it. He has a respectable income and a lifestyle that many of us would envy. You may not be aware, but Andrew and his family live in Milan. He gets to hang out near the Italian Alps, working part-time on his brand. This lifestyle business version of success often gets overlooked, but it shouldn't. True e-commerce success can look very different depending on the path you choose. If you haven't seen it yet, check out the Paddle Smash interview. This is one of those hockey stick growth stories. Fast scale, explosive momentum, and a very different set of challenges. So click on the thumbnail. I'll see you there. All the best.